Susan seduced her husband's 21-year-old nephew and was caught. Her name is Susan, and she doesn't feel bad about seducing her nephew, who brought excitement into her life at 45. This happened when Susan's husband, Hudson, decided to support her nephew Sebastian for 4 months. Sebastian took advantage of this situation during Susan's stay with Hudson, who was generous enough to let her stay comfortably. It all began a year ago when Susan married Hudson, a successful businessman in the telecommunications industry who won her over instantly. They met when he proposed marriage. She knew he partly wanted her because he always desired a woman like her. Some men feel great having a valuable woman by their side, and Hudson was no exception. Her husband could be like a mother one day, kind and charismatic, and a demon the next, selfish and ruthless. It was like an angel and a demon lived in the same body. He had the power to charm any woman, making their dreams come true or turning them to sadness if he grew tired of them. Susan was attracted to Hudson, but also weary. She wanted him to know she wasn't naive. Life had taught her enough about how the world works. She wasn't the type to believe in love stories or empty promises. Her marriage to Hudson wasn't perfect, but it helped her gain a better position in society. However, their relationship was more like a business agreement than a love affair. For a year, they were like strangers living together, not touching or being intimate like lovers. They sometimes shared a bed and believed Hudson was satisfied with what she offered. But sometimes nothing seemed enough for him. It wasn't surprising for her to find out he was unfaithful, but she didn't confront him because she knew her presence in his life wasn't about being a faithful partner. She was just there to portray the perfect wife. It seemed like he wouldn't care if she left without warning, even if she were unfaithful. Hudson just wanted her by his side to play the role of the perfect wife. With time, she realized she had become a mere accessory, overshadowed by the man who could bring chaos into her life. She accepted the mistreatment, indifference, and disloyalty because she chose this life the moment she married him. Fortunately, her life had a surprise. Sebastian, her husband's nephew. Sebastian showed up one morning with 2 suitcases and a sad smile. Since he hadn't been able to attend their wedding, they met for the first time when Hudson invited him over. Sebastian looked at her with a familiar expression similar to when Hudson introduced her to friends or colleagues. Throughout her life, Susan knew how she influenced men. Some looked at her with desire, as if she were a delicious meal, while others felt intimidated because they weren't accustomed to being around a woman like her. Her beauty was her best quality, and she knew how to use it to her advantage. When Susan observed her nephew-in-law's reaction, feelings of greed and desire started to arise within her. "Thank you very much, Aunt," Sebastian said that day after her husband showed him the room she had prepared for him. The fact that he called her aunt bothered her, but she didn't think much of it. She would try everything to make him call her differently. As days went by, Sebastian settled into the city smoothly and performed well in his pursuits. Sometimes he came home early and had dinner with her. Hudson would join them occasionally, but most of the time she was alone with her nephew. These moments of solitude gave her insight. Sebastian was a determined, kind, and charismatic man. He enjoyed taking care of himself and regularly exercised. On several occasions, she caught him doing push-ups in her room. His muscular physique and intense gaze stirred up sensations within her. She had forgotten how to feel, but gradually she succumbed to the attraction Sebastian stirred in her. Knowing looks and accidental touches became common between them despite their age difference and relationship. The passion that grew between Sebastian and her was undeniable. As a woman who relied on her beauty, she knew how to use it to her advantage. When Sebastian expressed his gratitude, calling her aunt, she felt bothered but chose to ignore it. She was determined to change how he addressed her. Despite this, the days passed calmly, and Sebastian quickly adapted to the city, finding success in his endeavors. He would sometimes come home early and have dinner with her. Other times they would have dinner alone. These moments of solitude allowed her to get to know Sebastian better. He was a determined, kind, and charismatic man who took care of himself and exercised regularly. She often found him doing push-ups in his room with the door open. The observant woman quickly learned Sebastian's routine, preferences, favorite foods, and allergies. In front of her husband, she acted like an aunt would, but in reality she was obsessed with Sebastian. What started as curiosity soon developed into something more as the days passed. One day, while sharing breakfast, she decided to take the first step and ask him if he had a girlfriend. Sebastian hesitated before admitting that he did, but due to studies and internships, they couldn't continue their relationship. The woman astutely suggested that at his age, women might not know what they want, and proposed considering a more open-minded approach to relationships. Sebastian seemed confused, but she persisted, suggesting that at her age, what mattered most to women was stability and maturity. Sebastian seemed interested and asked where he could find someone like that. With a smile, the woman told him that life takes many turns and perhaps that woman was closer than he thought. Sebastian didn't respond, but his eyes showed that something had sparked in his mind. Maybe there was a woman out there with those qualities, and she might be closer than he realized. She was right in front of him. Now it was time to turn that idea into reality. From that day on, she promised herself that if she wanted to be intimate with her husband's nephew, she would do it when her husband was away and Sebastian was home from work. She would prepare delicious food for him and ensure that the house was empty by instructing her employees to leave before 5 p.m. As she took care of her home, she wondered about Sebastian's well-being and when he would come home or study. Whenever she felt the need, she didn't hesitate to go to his room. He was always polite and shy with her. Even when she apologized for interrupting his work, he seemed tense, and her reactions hardly fed her desire. So she became more strategic. Sometimes she didn't wear clothes at home, and when she did, she wore silk dresses that left little to the imagination. When they met in the kitchen, she moved slowly and provocatively to reveal a good view of her figure. On weekends when he went swimming, she joined him, knowing he never sunbathed. She stopped drinking water, and when she came out of the pool, she flaunted her curves. She always wore dark sunglasses to discreetly observe his reactions and where his eyes wandered. One night, she decided to take her plan to the next level. Hudson was late that day, having had some drinks. Eventually, they ended up making love in the living room, not on the couch. As she seductively made her move, she heard footsteps coming down the stairs. Knowing it was Sebastian, she began to moan sensually, pretending she was enjoying whatever he was doing. She looked for opportunities and found Sebastian. Her eyes were fixed on him, and she could see the expression on his face. Sebastian could only see their torsos, but he knew the sight of her hips swaying had caused his reaction. She maintained eye contact, biting her lip with desire. When she placed 2 fingers in her mouth, Sebastian looked away and quickly climbed the stairs. In the following days, he seemed to avoid her, getting up earlier, drinking coffee without working in the afternoons, and returning home later than usual. On weekends, she would study at the library, knowing he was avoiding her. She started to worry about his behavior. He sat up, and she could see that he was breathing heavily. She followed him and sat next to him. Her hands immediately tried to grab his waist. He held her hair with one hand and firmly pressed her against the wall with the other. Not wasting any more time, she sat on his lap and they kissed again, but she wanted more. Sebastian was hesitant at first, but eventually started to deliver soft caresses and kisses, preparing them for what was to come. "Leave it to me," she whispered in his ear. Slowly, she removed the last piece of clothing Sebastian was wearing. He found her attractive before. Now she was even more. She pushed him onto the bed until they were both ready for what was to come. She lay on her back, her eyes consuming him as if she wanted to memorize the image of her body in his mind. Climbing on top of him, all the forbidden thoughts she had about Sebastian emerged. She knelt on the bed like an expert, making him savor every part of her in a seductive game that strained their relationship. What followed would lead to an even more dangerous game, but she didn't care. She pleasured him twice in a row without giving him time to process the sensations. When she was about to pleasure him for the 3rd time with her mouth, Sebastian stopped her, putting his hand on her head. "Don't you know how many times I fantasized about you?" he asked. "Is this a dream?" she asked with a trembling voice. "No, Sebastian, it's not a dream," she whispered, her voice filled with passion. From that day on, things only got better. Sebastian was a quick and eager learner, always ready to please her. They were exploring a new, more intense facet of desire together. Each encounter pushed them to their limits, intoxicated by mutual desire. Despite knowing it was unfair to involve Sebastian in her games, she couldn't resist the consuming desire between them. Her affair with Sebastian would end when he returned home, giving her time to reflect on their actions. But for now, she could only think about Sebastian and the excitement of their adventure. She marveled at how quickly he had transformed from a young man to someone capable of satisfying the desires of a mature woman. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. How did you find the story? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more compelling narratives and engaging content. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, stay tuned for more.